Well, sometimes I have problems falling asleep at night. And to help me to go to sleep, I watch some videos that don't require me to really focus or pay attention. I started with videos of construction, people building different things, and most recently I landed on videos of people repairing and restoring stuff. Those are really useful to help me fall asleep. Those restoration videos are interesting enough to watch, but not that interesting that I would feel the need to stay awake and watch them the whole process. I can fall asleep and wake up several times, and then when I feel ready to go into deep sleep, I just turn my phone on. One of the interesting things about the restoration videos I watch is that they always start with some piece of junk, something they found in the trash or in the junkyard. Something that once had some sort of value or use, but because it has a crack, or it has become old because of some flaw, it's considered useless and no value and thrown away. Sometimes a restoration starts with something found in the thrift store or in a garage sale. Something that to the untrained eye has little or no value, but for experts, for people who are used to restoring things, for people who have trained eyes to see the value in things, they buy something for a cheap price, restore it, and then sell it for much, much more than what they bought it. Something that had no value for the original owner after being restored has incredible value and brings much profit to the person who spent time working on it and investing in it. The restoration process is not always simple. Sometimes it takes many days, and in the videos I watch or that watch me sleep, the person doing the restoration has to take the object through several processes of cleaning and applying different solutions at it and scrubbing it until the dirt has come off. Sometimes the restoration process is painful. There are times the restorer cuts themselves, or some sparkle burns their hand, face, or leg. Sometimes they hammer their finger, and sometimes, or something else happens, which in some ways only adds to the value of the object being restored. The higher the cost for restoring, the higher the value of the object being restored. And by the way, I'm only talking about YouTube videos. Any resemblance to reality is pure nonsense. Restoration is hard, right? It is painful. It takes a lot of patience and dedication. Those involved in the work of restoration must do it with courage, love, and determination. And when I read the letter that the Apostle Paul sent to Philemon and the church that gathered at his house, I hear a similar idea to the ones from the videos I watched to fall asleep. The letter to Philemon is one of the 7 letters written by the Apostle Paul. Philemon was among the leaders of one of the house churches in Asia Minor. The church at Philemon's house, or as I want to call him today, Brother Phil, is believed to be connected to the Colossian church. The reason for the letter appears to be a conflict between Brother Phil and one of his slaves called Onesimus. And for some reason, Onesimus left the house of Brother Phil and found himself at the company of the Apostle Paul. Being a short letter, there are many unknowns and unanswered questions in this letter. For starters, why did Onesimus live in the first place? Where did he go, and where could he expect refuge? Onesimus was a runaway slave, and even though people tried to argue that slavery in the Roman Empire was different than the slavery witnessed in the Americas due to the transatlantic slave trade, slavery anywhere and at any time, in any circumstances, is cruel, wrong, immoral, and completely against God's purpose for humanity. But that was the system of the time, and Christians were called to navigate through it and to answer to the system according to the teachings of Jesus to his disciples. But since Paul addresses the issue of Christian and slavery in the first century on his letter to the Colossians, we will talk more about this when the lectionary leads us there. Without entering too much on the issue of slavery in the Roman Empire, there are other questions we would still ask about the reasons why Onesimus left Brother Phil's house and why he found refuge with Paul. Maybe Onesimus knew the influence Paul had on Brother Phil and could be an advocate for him in resolving whatever issue Onesimus and Phil had. Maybe Brother Phil had disappointed Onesimus, promising to set him free, and was delaying it. There's also little about Onesimus' situation that can be said with certainty. Too much is left for conjecture, but still the little that is given in the letter to Philemon is positive rather than negative. Yes, the relationship between Onesimus and Phil was precarious, but there's also room for grace, love, and reconciliation, which is what Paul is focusing on this letter. Paul does not deny that there's a conflict, but instead of focusing on who is right and who is wrong, Paul gives emphasis to the transforming power of the gospel that works and operates in the lives and relationships of believers, regardless of class or any other distinction. Paul was in prison and under house arrest, and nevertheless, he was able to provide refuge for Onesimus. And during this time, Onesimus became a believer in Christ and a disciple of Jesus. And Paul had to do some restoration to Onesimus. The process of evangelism and discipleship of Paul with Onesimus is not described here. We don't know how long Onesimus stayed with Paul and how hard Paul had to work on Onesimus. We don't know the cost of discipleship of that Onesimus imposed on Paul. What we know is that after some time, Onesimus was not a slave anymore. He was Paul's child. He found a new life, a new purpose, a new reason to live. Paul labored with Onesimus. He invested himself in Onesimus. Paul taught him what he could, but it came time for Onesimus to practice his faith in Christ by going back to Phil's house. Paul sends Onesimus back, but with a new identity. Paul is not sending the old Onesimus back. He's sending his own heart back to Phil. And the expectation for Phil is to receive Onesimus, not as a slave with whom he had a problem, but as an equal, as a child of God, and a dearly and beloved brother. In sending Onesimus back, Paul makes an interesting statement. He says, previously, Onesimus had no value. He was useless, but now he has great value. This value was not only for Paul, but for Phil as well. See, the name Onesimus means useful and profitable. So while talking about this change in Onesimus from useless to useful, Paul is playing with words, but also highlighting that there is a value in Onesimus' life, that he matters, that there is a giftedness in him that needs to be recognized and celebrated. As I see it, one of the main problems of our time is the loss and value of human life. Life has become disposable items. People in relationship are disposable. They have worth as long as they bring some benefit. If we ask around how much a life is worth, what do you think would be the answer? My guess is that we would find people saying depend on those lives. We also live in a time where people's lives are measured by their accomplishments, by their influence, by their wealth, by their level of likability. And I'm afraid we're living in a time where human life doesn't have intrinsic value anymore. A sociologist called Zygmunt Bauman called this time a liquid modernity. A time where relationships and identities depend on the occasional mood of a person and the value that they bring, not the value of commitment. In the liquid modernity, things only have value if they serve me and if they increase my image and feeling of power. In the book Moral Blindness, Bauman said that the updated version of the first cogito is, I'm seeing, therefore I am. And the more people who see me, the more I am. We create a fake standard where exterior appearance is more important than character, that power is more important than humility, that the circle of influence is more important than gentleness and generosity. And so many people continue trying to live up to these fake standards of value and success. We see people lying, deceiving, sacrificing family relationships to achieve these standards that at the end lead to emptiness, sadness, frustration, and death. In the epistle lesson for today, Paul is insisting with Brother Phil to recognize the great value in Onesimus' life, not because he possesses wealth or because he has accomplished something, but because he's a human being, a child of God. And now Onesimus has also become a follower of Christ, a brother in faith. Paul here is changing the way we measure value, usefulness, and profit. He's given us a new metric to measure those things. In a similar way, the Reverend John Wesley understood that the value and usefulness of those who serve Christ need to be measured by a different metric. In the letter to a fellow Methodist preacher, Reverend Wesley said, "Give me 100 preachers who fear nothing but sin and desire nothing but God, and I care not a straw whether they are clergymen or laymen. Such alone will shake the gates of hell and set up the kingdom of heaven on earth." Wesley helped us to imagine a completely different metric to attribute usefulness to people. For Wesley, in the work of God, those who fear sin and desire nothing but God are the ones who are useful and profitable. If we take a step further and use the language of the study John is leading our church into, Paul is opening Brother Phil's eyes for the Christ that lives inside Onesimus. The usefulness of Onesimus is already fulfilled in being a vessel of Christ. And there's also a deep connection that is revealed here between Phil, Paul, and Onesimus. They're not only connected in their labor for Christ, but they have Christ living inside them. And upon this reality, Paul pleads with Phil to treat Onesimus as if you were treating me. Receive him as if you were receiving me. If he owes you anything, you give that to me. The same Christ that lives inside you lives inside me and lives inside Onesimus. Whatever you do to him, you are doing to me. And whatever you are doing to him, you are doing to Christ, for Christ lives inside of him. That's Paul's argument to Phil. And isn't that what Jesus taught in the parable of the sheep and of the goats? Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did to me. Isn't that the idea behind Paul's own calling when he was persecuting Christians and Christ came to him and said, I am the one who you are persecuting? With this letter, Paul is instructing Phil to recognize that there's a high value, a high profit in welcoming Onesimus, because by welcoming him, Phil would be welcoming Christ in his house and in his life. And with this understanding in mind, I want to also bring back what we have been talking about for the last 2 Sundays, about welcoming all people, loving all people, and making room at the table to all people. Last Sunday especially, we visit Luke chapter 14 when we talk about the parable of the great feast, where a host sent servants out and called those who were living in the streets and alleys, those who were poor, crippled, blind, and lame, those who before were useless to many, but now are useful and welcome. Not because they have something material to give or because there is something of exterior value, but because they are human beings, because they carry in their own body the fingerprints and the DNA of the divine. How amazing it is, even outside Scripture, we find this precious lesson. The New Colossus, the poem that is inside of the Statue of Liberty, and for so many years welcome immigrants from all over the world, proclaim these words to America. Here at our sea wash, sunset gates shall stand. A mighty woman with a torch whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name is Mother of Exiles. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. In the poem that guided the conscience of this country for many years, we hear the same calling to see and give value to human life, not based on last names, strength, productivity, or net worth, but based on the recognition of dignity in every human life. Give me your tired, your poor, your homeless, your hurting masses yearning to breathe free. As I said last week, we are too quick to give up on people, to exclude them, and to deem them not valuable or not important. But the appeal we hear Paul making to feel to the church in his house and to all Christians who hear the letter to Philemon is to put our glasses of love and see the value in each person. To see the gifts of all people, that all people have. And we are not gifted in the same way. Some are gifted to music. Some are gifted to writing. Some are gifted to speak. Some are gifted to listening. And above all things, all of us are gifted with the presence of Christ. How different our relationships would be if we understood and treated all people as if we were treating Christ. Not only the ones who act like Christ, but also the ones who act like there's no sign of Christ in them. How much people's lives would be changed if we were to treat them as if we knew Christ lived inside of them. And whatever we do, they were to Christ. We do not know what was the response Father Phil gave to Paul's request. There are some who believe the famous bishop of Ephesus by the name of Onesimus was the same Onesimus that once was runaway slave. That Phil heard Paul's request and treated him as he would have treated Paul himself. Being him the same person or not, the challenge of the Word of God for us today is the same. To love all people, to seek and see the giftedness and value and profit in all people's lives, and to see the living Christ that lives in all those around us. By doing this, we will glorify our Father in heaven. By doing this, we will give witness to the living Christ and to the Christ that lives inside of us. In the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Will you pray with me? Eternal Christ, we give you thanks for this day. We give you thanks for the letter to Philemon. It was included in your word that reminds us of seeking and seeing the value in every person's life. Help us, Lord, not to treat people around us and to measure them, their usefulness with the same metric that we are used to, but help us to see and measure value and giftedness in new metrics. Help us to conceive the value in each person's life. Help us to see the giftedness that every person has. Help us, Lord, to love and to insist on loving all people. Help us to see Christ living in all people, and help us to treat all people as Christ living in them. Help us to treat people with dignity and love. Help us to treat people with mercy and care. In the name of our Lord.